Hi there. Say you've got transaction data coming into your Postgres instance and you want to continually move the data out of your database for improved analytics, or maybe you want to archive the data without losing access. How can you do that? Today, we're going to look at how you can use GlareDB to take the results of any query and write them out to Delta files. In this example, we're going to use web event data from Postgres, and we'll look at 3 different operations in GlareDB. First, we'll take the results of our query and use them to create a delta table. Then, we'll take our delta table and add that as an external table in GlareDB that can be queried as though it were any other table in our database. Finally, we'll learn how to insert new data into your delta table as you get new data in your Postgres instance and you want to archive it or write it back out. This one is near and dear because we use delta tables as our own internal storage format here at GlareDB. And so this is just a very familiar use case. Let's get started. So first we'll make sure that GlareDB is installed, then we'll import it and set up a connection. For this example, we're using web event data, which is stored in Postgres. And the idea is that as new events occur, they are logged in our transactional database. And now we'd like to archive some of our older data to a Delta Lake. So first let's take a look at the data. You can see that it's pretty ordinary web event data. Event ID, user ID, event type, timestamp, etc. And now if we want to write this back out to Delta tables, we can just take our query and we're going to wrap it in parentheses and then put copy before, to, after, and then the location. You'll see I've also added a limit, and that's so that I can, for the sake of this demonstration, just write the beginning of the table right now, and then in just a moment, we'll insert the rest of it. So let's try this and see what happens. Okay, we get an error. So one really critical note here is you're going to want to make sure that the file path that you're putting here leads to a directory that already exists and is empty. And so right now we do not have that directory, so we'll create it and then try this again. Yeah, and so this is an artifact of running this in a notebook, but now this works. You'll see if we do another ls, we've got our delta log and the Parquet file, version Parquet file. These together comprise a delta table. One other note, when you're working with local files with delta tables, you're going to use this notation with absolute path with this file prefix. And this is similar to, like, you can use the same operation with files on GCS or S3, and then you'd use the GCS or S3 prefix. Now that we have our delta table that we've successfully written, let's look at creating an external table with that delta file. And so what we're going to do is just create external table if not exists, and we'll call it delta web events from delta. This is the format, options, and then the location. And when we run this, you'll see that this now creates this reference to this external table in our GlareDB instance. And so we haven't yet moved data into GlareDB, but GlareDB can just refer to the table wherever it is. And we can select from it as though it's any other table within GlareDB. Okay, so we've queried our data in Postgres. We've created a delta table from the results, and we've added that as an external table to GlareDB so that we can easily write queries against it in the future. Now, as more events are recorded to our Postgres table, we would like to insert those into our delta table as well. So since we've added our delta table as an external table, we can basically treat it as any other table in our GlareDB instance, even though the data are not actually stored in GlareDB. And so we can use insert into the way we would with any other table. So first, let's just take a look. We'll write a query that gets the difference between our Postgres table and our delta table. You can see this is 500 rows, which makes sense because we had 1,500 rows in our Postgres table, and we wrote out the first 1,000 of them to our delta table. So we've seen that. Now we're going to just alter our external table. We're going to set the access mode to read-write so that we get write permissions as well. And then once we've done that, we can basically just call here insert into delta web events, the name of our external table, and then we'll have the query that we just ran above. Okay, so we see we have this notebook artifact again, but we can confirm that this worked by calling a select on our external table. And you see here, we've got 1,500 rows. If we want to confirm this again, we can also call ls on our Delta table directory. And you see here that we now have an extra Parquet file, which refers to the second write that we've done to our table. So again, the way Delta tables work is with version Parquet. And so we had one Parquet file from before, and now we've got a second one. All right, so now you know how you can take any data in Postgres or really anywhere else, and you can archive it out to Delta tables. And of course, you can do this with plenty of other formats as well. Thanks, everybody.